council meeting. Welcome everybody.
Oh yeah, fruit.
And acknowledge that we are in the middle. Okay. Just advise everyone that we are audio and video streaming this meeting on the City of Hobart YouTube channel. And like to ask that all mobile devices be turned off or put onto silent for the assistance with the communications. And if you can just wait till I announce you before speaking. So we have everyone here. Oh, well, we don't have everyone here right now, but they are in the building. So we certainly have a quorum and there are no leave of absences and no apologies. Starting with our acknowledgement to country, in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I'd like to acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. The minutes of our meeting from the 23rd of November.
Yes, so moved, Lord Mayor.
Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Ewan. Would all those in favour of those minutes?
No.
Against? Carried unanimously. Transfer of any agenda items. Would anyone like to propose that any items be moved? Anybody? No? Okay. Communication from the Chair. I do have a couple of things tonight. So, first of all, starting with the City of Hobart was awarded the 2020 Resilient Australia National Local Government Award. So this is the beautiful award here. So this is a national award collected in Canberra by Ms. Kimbra Parker on behalf of the City. And it was for our suite of May 2018 flood projects, collectively known as Resilient Hobart. The projects that responded to the recovery and resilience needs of the individuals who are impacted, as well as community groups in the broader community. This is the certificate as well. The award was presented at the National Museum in Canberra by Minister for Agriculture, Drought and Emergency Management, the Honourable David Littleproud, and the projects were made possible through joint funding by the Australian and Tasmanian governments under the Natural Disaster Relief and Recovery Arrangement. So a big congratulations to particularly all of the staff that took the initiative to put in the grant soon after the flood occurred and to design and undertake those projects. So it's a great award, national award for the City of Hobart. I've also got another announcement of another winner. The Councillor Jax Ewan has recently received 2 awards for Out of Australia as an under 30 under 30 finalist and winner of the Young Professional of the Year. Out for Australia's 30 under 30 awards recognises young LGBTQIA+ people under 30 who are making tangible contributions to bettering the lives of queer people in Australia, demonstrating success in their field and living with authenticity, courage and resilience, demonstrating the qualities of a role model. And the Out for Australia's Young Professional of the Year. If you can't see it, you can't be it. This award recognises exceptional success in any career field and was awarded for advocacy around gender inclusivity, housing and homelessness, drug policy and mentorship. So congratulations to Councillor Ewan for this national recognition. And finally, I just also wanted to acknowledge that there was an elected member and executive leadership team planning forum that occurred on Friday the 6th of November 2020. 10 elected members attended over the course of the afternoon. The agenda included a presentation by Dr. Roberta Ryan, a Professor of Local Government at the University of Newcastle, and some brainstorming and briefing around strategic plan, financial issues and governance issues. and some of the notes and outcomes of the day have been circulated on the hub. So that's all my communications this week. Thank you, everyone. Item 3 is notification of council workshops. There was a workshop on the 1st of December on our social inclusion framework, and there were 6 elected members in attendance. Item 4 is public question time. Do we have any questions?
Lord Mayor.
No? No public questions. And item 5 is petitions.
No petitions.
No
either,
petitions,
Lord Mayor.
great. Supplementary items. There are 2 supplementary items on our agenda. Would someone like to move those?
I don't know. Well, I can, but I didn't think there were, Lord Mayor. But
we've got the Montravale Rise.
that's part of the agenda already.
No, we've got the one we just did, the joint committees.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's on the agenda already.
It says I've got 2.
All right, I'll move it, but it's on the agenda.
Item 18. Lord Mayor. Item 18.
Fine. Councillor Ewan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 7 is indications of pecuniary conflicts of interest. Do any elected members wish to indicate an interest in any item appearing on the open council agenda? There being no interests, we will move on to and we're now acting as a planning authority. I'll invite Deputy Lord Mayor to move item 8.1.
There are a few things happening here, but I'll move 9.1, which is 130 Murray Street, 125 Bathurst Street, Hobart, partial demolition and new building for 7 multiple dwellings and food services. Move that, Lord Mayor.
Second, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas.
More specifically, Lord Mayor, this is a close to 7-storey building on which faces Murray Street next to Chemist Warehouse. The construction of a new mixed-use building with 7 floors plus roof and rooftop plant. The ground floor would contain a commercial tenancy and would retain the facade of the existing building. The first floor would contain car parking and storage for the residential dwellings. Vehicle access to this floor would be via a right-of-way from Bathurst Street over the property of 125 Bathurst Street. And the remaining 5 floors would consist of 7 residential dwellings with 4 2-bedroom apartments on levels 2 and 3 and 3 or 4-bedroom apartments on levels 4, 5 and 6. The height of the building is approximately 25.3 metres to its rooftop plant. It has a gross floor area of 1,510 square metres, has ample bicycle parking and a car stacker for residents. Lord Mayor, the Urban Design Advisory Panel were generally in support of this building. It seemed to be a good addition to dwellings in this space, and it's not pushing those boundaries of height. So at committee, it was supported unanimously. There was one representation against the building, and mainly those concerns were impact on the neighbouring building, and some of those things were really to be considered when the building approval goes through, should this development be approved. So in all, a really good development that doesn't detract from the heritage next door. So there's some heritage conditions, but it was certainly supported by the heritage officers and seen to be a good addition to the housing stock within the City of Hobart.
Further discussion? No discussion? Just ask a question about the first floor parking. Is that visible from the street, or is it?
Through you, Lord Mayor, it is set back from the facade, the first floor or ground floor facade, and there will be landscaping in front of it, so it will be fairly well camouflaged and not an obvious car park.
Right. No summing up, so I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against, say no. Carried unanimously. Item 9.2.
Lord Mayor, this is the application that 32 and 30 Romilly Street, South Hobart, subdivision boundary adjustment, 10 multiple dwellings, 9 new, 1 existing, and works in the road reserve and associated hydraulic infrastructure. I'll move the committee's recommendation.
Second by Alderman Thomas.
Lord Mayor, this has probably taken up quite a lot of time over the week for many of us, and it's certainly been something that has received quite a lot of public attention, particularly of residents of Waterworks Road and Romilly Street in that particular area. There were 38 representations, and the application is on what has been deemed since I think the City of Hobart planning scheme came in I think 1982, was it Mr Noy, as an inner city residential zone, and so has to comply to those development standards. Craig, can we have a picture of the first picture, please? So, thank you. Could you take the side away as well, so it's slightly bigger? So what we have is quite a steep block on Romilly Street, coming down at that lower section of Romilly Street. There are the boundary adjustment occurs with this house at 30 Romilly Street, and this is the existing building at 32, with 9 other dwellings proposed. One on this same, or a few on this same level with the existing building, and then 4 down on this lower slope, this very steep block, which has had quite a lot of fill in it over many years. The banding around the side, which goes along the Sandy Bay rivulet on this side, is covenanted. So it's a City of Hobart Council covenant, which we know other covenants aren't as strong as they could be, but we have assurances from the director that this covenant is very strong. There is to be some of the trees taken, but we have also conditioned that as many trees can be retained as possible. There's only this unit 2, which is out of the building envelope, from my understanding, which goes, which has a bit of the private open space decking into that covenanted area. But on the whole, it was felt by the committee that this the recommendation for approval, subject to significant conditions, and Alderman Briscoe did move conditions so that the landscaping and weed reduction was undertaken across that area as part of the landscape condition. We can go to the next slide. The other thing that was very important for residents, particularly on the other side of the valley and across Sandy Bay rivulet, was access to the rivulet, and it sparked a whole lot of questions around the council's plan to have a trail along the Sandy Bay rivulet. So this is the proposed trail as part of the plans that were undertaken in 2006, and I think have been updated. So you can see the proposed purchase of land that has already been purchased on this other side of the rivulet, and here is the block that we're considering. So some of the thought was that we should buy some of this land down here, but as can be seen, that land is already covenanted around the side of the rivulet, and this is the land that is favoured by Council's Parks area to make sure that we get that. So, Lord Mayor, I'll summarise. I think there is obviously great concern about potential for trees to be reduced, but what I think this has done, and this application has really given us an opportunity to look at planning in the bigger picture. Obviously, people want the land coverage as best as possible, and with foliage as best as possible, and to be retained. And this, whilst there are 9 dwellings proposed for this area, 9 new dwellings proposed, it's seen to be as low impact as possible. I haven't talked about traffic, but I'm sure Councillor Dutta might talk about the traffic onto Romilly Street.
It has been seconded, hasn't it, Lord Mayor? Oh, thank you. Look, it is a difficult site, and I did anonymously go up there today and wander around and look at various issues up there. Probably if we were blessed with a lot of land, flat land close to the city, this place would never be developed because it's in a gully. I don't know about the solar access, but it wouldn't be good. And some of the surrounding houses in Romilly Street, and particularly the ones near the bridge, and the ones at the other road, are built really low. So they're looking up to the hill where this development is going to possibly happen. It is a situation where it does fit in with the planning scheme with just tiny little tweaks that the Deputy has mentioned. It has been suggested that we should have advice, and I would agree that there is a proposal to have advice. This has been sent to Margaret, so I'll read it out. It's advice, it's not a condition, but there are some significantly big trees that are proposed to be removed, which to me are significant trees. Now, they might be 50 or 60 years old, and I think they all would date from the last the big bushfire in '67. But they are massive trees and would change the outlook of that valley. So we can't condition it, but this is advice. So it is suggested, I'm moving an amendment, Part A, that this gets included into the advice. It's proposed to remove, if it is proposed to remove any trees within the area subject to the covenant with the Hobart City Council, the permission of the council will be required pursuant to the covenant, and an application will be required to amend or remove condition E and V9 from the planning permit. Or if it is proposed to relocate buildings 2, 3 and 4 in order to obtain building approvals, because remember there's another layer that we have to have here, as well as a planning approval, they have to have building approval, then an application will be required to amend the planning permit to show the new location of these dwellings to ensure that the development is substantially in accordance with the approved plans as required by the condition GEN. Now, this wording has come via the Deputy, suggested, the wording has been suggested by the Director. Before I leave this application, just a question to the Director, through you, Lord Mayor, if that's okay. The question is that there is a condition now with landscaping, and that you have plantings of indigenous plants to your satisfaction. Would that be required to happen at the conclusion of the project before any blocks are sold, or houses are sold off? In other words, before. Do you understand the question?
Through you, Lord Mayor, yes, that would normally be required to be completed at the time of completion certificate being issued under the Building Act.
Okay, thank you for that. I know a resident did ask me today to make it a condition, but it is part of the condition that get the sign off, you would have to have the plantings. Now, if they're the right plants, then they'll grow pretty quickly in that valley, I can imagine, because it's protected and it'll be reasonably damp. Whilst in an ideal world, no one in their right mind would build there, this is not an ideal world. We're stuck with the topography of Hobart, and there are a shortage of dwellings for residents and other new people to the Hobart. So I will support the motion, and hopefully people will support the amendment which puts in some of these advice clauses.
Just a question,
Further
Lord Mayor.
discussion? Yes.
Just a question to either Alderman Briscoe or the director. Or can you just read the amendment out again? Because I've just got a question around the amendment.
Yep. Margaret to read that. Yeah.
Yes, Lord Mayor, the amendment, two parts. Clause A, if it is proposed to remove any trees within the area subject to a covenant with the Hobart City Council, the permission of the council will be required pursuant to the covenant, and an application will be required to amend or remove condition ENV 9 from the planning permit. And secondly, if it is proposed to relocate dwellings 2, 3 and or 4 in order to obtain building approvals, then the application will be required to amend the planning permit to show the new location of those dwellings, to ensure that the development is substantially in accordance with the approved plans as required by condition called Gen.
And could I just clarify a tiny little bit more? For example, the building permit may not be issued if the bushfire plan approved by the Tasmanian Fire Service is not approved. So that's why we probably need to move.
My question was, if we can't put a condition on something as far as the removal of trees, can we put advice requiring them to do something?
Yeah, this is advice.
Yeah, but if we can't condition something in our advice, can we require somebody to do something in advice? It seems a bit.
No, in advice you can only...
That's just what I'm trying to clarify.
It's only advice.
Going for the director. Sorry.
Through you, Chair, as I understand it, it is advice only, so they're not required to necessarily do it. Although we're just simply pointing out their obligations.
So we're not adding a requirement, we're just advising them of already existing requirements.
That's
okay. No, that's I'm happy with that. Thank you.
So while you're on your feet, it's the same clause. Can I ask a question, Mr. Noy? So I think that the concern is around the covenant and the strength of it in the face of a BAL, a bushfire attack level assessment, saying that the houses are not far enough away from the trees. Are you saying that covenant isn't strong enough it won't take precedence in that situation, or are you saying if they don't get the BAL assessment, they'll have to come back to council and seek our approval about whether we're willing to change the covenant? So that will have to happen. It's not advice, it's what will have to happen under law.
Yeah, look, there's a couple of things. If they don't achieve that necessary rating and they have to amend their application either by relocating the dwellings or removing additional vegetation, then they will have to come back to us and seek a clarification. It might be a minor amendment depending on the extent of the changes, or it is most likely require a new application.
Further discussion. Councillor Dutta?
Lord Mayor, I have two questions. Question number one is with regards to the land that the developer wants to gift to the council, and I just need clarification in that. If that is true, are we going to accept it? If not, why not? Question one. Question number two, with regards to density, in the city planning meeting on the 30th, it is my understanding, if my memory serves me right, that the developer stated they were able to build 36 dwellings, but in fact they were only going to build another 9, which makes it 10 altogether. Again, I just need clarification to those two. Thank you.
Mr. Noy?
Look, I'll answer the second question first, and I might hand over the first question to Mr. Doyle. But in relation to the question as to density and how many dwellings that they could technically have provided for under the scheme and satisfy the density provisions, it is in the order of that 36 figure. However, the applicant is proposing only 9 additional dwellings and is non-compliant with the density standards of the scheme because they are not providing sufficient number to meet the acceptable solution. So the acceptable solutions specify a number of dwellings between 200 and 400 square metres, and they're not proposing that density. In fact, they're proposing a lower density than that, and that's a discretionary aspect of this proposal.
Lord Mayor, in response to that first question from Councillor Dutta, to my knowledge there has been no offer of a free transfer of the land. There was some initial discussions about the potential sale of the land to council. At this stage, however, it's been an informal discussion, and as the Deputy referred to when she opened this item, the officer advice back to the landowner at the time was that the council's strategic direction was to build access along the Sandy Bay rivulet on the other side of the land to this on the other side of the rivulet to where this development is proposed on council-owned land. As such, the suggested exchange and discussions around that were never progressed.
Sorry, Mr. Doyle, while you're up, can I just ask a further clarification on that point? There's been some suggestion that we might, though, need to negotiate with landowners on that other side, like around 102 and 104 Waterworks Road, that we don't currently have access there. Is that correct?
Lord Mayor, there was some advice provided on the hub on Friday which showed connectivity from the council-owned land opposite this proposal through to Romilly Street, and so that advice indicated that there is connectivity through there. There is also connectivity downstream by the construction of a proposed bridge over to further council land. I mean, at this stage, it is very high-level consideration. I think the other item, I guess, or the other issue for Aldermen to be aware of is that and it's been referred to earlier, that the topography of this land is such that any construction of connectivity through to Romilly Street would be particularly difficult, both being incredibly steep near the bridge and also low-lying in other areas which would make it flood-prone. There is no doubt more work to do to give us connectivity along the entire length of Sandy Bay Rivulet, and I should say too that the priority in terms of connectivity along Sandy Bay Rivulet has been from the top of Fitzroy Gardens through to Linton Avenue. So the area we're talking about now is certainly longer term in our thinking.
Further discussion? Councillor Coates.
Slight discussion, but also a question for you to the Director. Just to clarify in my mind, because it did get raised at the committee, but in terms of the traffic assessment or study that was done, if the Director informed, do you know when that was actually carried out?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor, it was in November 2019, and I think there was some confusion by some of the representatives because the actual report had a 2020 date. That was when the report was finalised. But the actual survey work of road use was undertaken in November 2019.
Thank you, Director. Look, just briefly quick comment on that. Look, obviously it's very disappointing to see something going in of less density than what's required for the zoning. I think it's zoned, in a very broad sense, it's zoned for a reason. This will, may well add to the, while adding to the housing stock of Hobart. It, if you like, it provides other challenges because it's less high density, but it's actually being used for high density, and that'll be a challenge going forward. But that said, I think this is a very good proposal. Obviously, there are some concerns of residents, but at least I'm aware. In the meantime, the developers actually met with them, walked them through the project, and look, when you do look at what they've proposed compared with what's actually allowed on the site, I think it is very modest and fits within the scope, and I'd encourage others to support it. Thanks.
Further discussion, Councillor Dutta?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to comment on 2 points first as an introductory comment. One is with regards to density. And I read from page 46, 6.7.5, and it says, there are a number of constraints on this site which precludes or it prevents or makes it impossible for a more dense development. So the fact is, because of the topography of the land, it is not as simple to have 36. And the report is very clear. Due to the difficulties and the constraints, therefore the reduction is there. The second point I want to make in the introductory comment is this. At the city planning meeting, because of the confusion in the report where it stated that the traffic report was conducted in July 2020, it was my view that if we were to take that data, that would be quite inappropriate because it was a time when it was really not very busy, and to take traffic report at that time. Since then, I have spoken to James. He met me and I was quite delighted with his attitude and his spirit in order to negotiate and make this work. And he drew my attention to the fact that it was done in November 2019. So therefore, I want to make those 2 points. However, having voted against it, I reread the report once again, and there are 2 issues for me still of concern. Firstly, the sitting and scale of the dwelling. Clause 11.4.2 P3 states that it must not cause unreasonable loss of amenity. And the report says this: there is a small area at the back of 102 Waterworks Road which will be shaded from 10 o'clock to 3 p.m. The council report considers this not to be unreasonable. However, there are a number of property owners on the other side who are affected, and especially 102 property owner of Waterworks Road considers this to be unreasonable. So we have these 2 opinions or 2 points. The second issue for me is this, that the existing road accessing and junctions. Now, the proposal includes an increase of 81 or 450% vehicle movements per day. Now, again, page 56 of the attachment A, of the City Planning Committee meeting states this, that based on the above assessment and given the submitted documentation, the proposed access may therefore be accepted under clause E551P3. Now, the operative word for me here is this, that it may therefore be accepted under that particular clause. Now, may for me indicates quite clearly that there is a discretion that I can use. There is a possibility that this could happen, and the converse of that is also true, that in fact it might not happen. So therefore, to be cautious, I would not feel comfortable to support this. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Just a question through you to the Director. Director, are any of the houses adjacent being overshadowed in this proposal? Because it looks like on page 121 that it's not the case.
What's the piece area?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I would agree that it's not the individual adjacent houses, but more so their open space is what I understand to be the case.
Thank you.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I might just say a few things. Just wanted to reiterate that this is an area with very significant natural values, constraints on the site, solar access, bushfire prone. So it is a challenging area and an important area as along one of our really significant rivulets. I think this proposal, in terms of its impact on neighbours, I mean there is a lot of concern, but I think the covenant provides a significant amount of protection that if the covenant wasn't there, then I would have some major concerns about supporting this. The covenant does provide some significant protection of screening trees, retain some of the amenity for neighbours, but if there's any, I am worried about if there's any incursion into the covenant as a result of the BAL, the bushfire alert level process, and so at this stage I'm happy to support on the basis that that will come back to us. So if there was any suggestion that these buildings hadn't been designed with a view of what will be required under the BAL process, then I will certainly be voting against it when it comes back, or hopefully they would move the dwellings or reduce the dwellings so that they can, because the covenant is a really important protection for habitat, for trees, for the natural values of the valley. The other thing is the track, which was another very significant issue that people raised, and I am again, the process of the last week has, I am persuaded that there is land that's been retained, there is a plan, and I certainly just hope we can advance that as soon as possible in some shape or form. But I am persuaded that the council has done the work to secure the land in the most appropriate point at this time. Thank you.
Well, Mayor, if I can just sum up very briefly, because I think most people have made the points very well, but just to point out on page 45, it refers to the works above Hobart Rivulet, which probably needs to be changed to Sandy Bay Rivulet, just in any of the approval documentation. We're looking at 9 dwellings, and whilst there is that capacity to have 36 on this, it was highly unlikely, which has already been said. This is in a gully. It doesn't provide much sunlight, and it's not the optimal place to dwell. However, I think the buildings, the dwellings have been designed to get as much maximum light as possible. I don't subscribe to the problem with overshadowing. I think this is really quite minimal given the distance from the proposed dwellings to other dwellings in the area. What else has happened during this process, and I really appreciate all parties who have spoken over the course of this week. So Friends of Sandy Bay Rivulet and the residents have met to have some of their concerns allayed. 38 representors did have a lot of their concerns raised in the conditions and in the officer's report, and whilst there was concern about how much time there was and the notification, this was represented as best as possible by the conditions. So again, this provides 9 new dwellings in a beautiful part of our city near one of our most significant links from the river to the mountain, the Sandy Bay rivulet. So I hope that all can support this.
Okay, I'll put the recommendation for approval. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Councillor Ewan, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Councillor Dutta.
Okay, moving on now to item 9.3. Have we got 9.3? No. 10.
Lord Mayor, I move this new delegations be supported.
Seconded by Councillor Ewan.
Recommendation. Lord Mayor, there has been, the government has amended some legislation to introduce new statutory timeframes for steps which take place after a planning permit is granted. As a consequence, decisions which have been made at officer level are now decisions which are being made on behalf of the planning authority as a legislative step. Delegations are required to ensure that decisions are being validly made. So there's a key new time frame under section 60, which looks at approval of a construction management plan, approval of detailed design drawings, and approval of a schedule of building materials and colours, and also section 31 of the Strata Titles Act. So it doesn't really change the delegation as much, but there's a difference in time frames. So moved.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Now, item 11. Deputy Lord Mayor.
I move that this matter be withdrawn from the agenda to be considered next meeting, at the next city planning meeting.
By Alderman Briscoe. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Right, so we now have a motion from Alderman Zuko, item 12.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'll put the motion if anyone's game enough to see it.
Seconded by Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, at last council meeting there was a left field amendment that got through, and I thought to myself, well, if we're going to sort of look at doing something for one particular part of our city, why not look at our city as a whole? Because we represent the city as a whole. We don't just represent one particular part. And mind you, as a person who's been in North Hobart since 1976, as a trader and a resident, I felt that why should the people that are associated with a suburb or live in a suburb or that have any more benefits than someone that lives in Sandy Bay or West Hobart or the Glebe or the CBD. Just for clarity, Lord Mayor, there was a question raised in regards to what we did in the not the cenotaph, oh God, I've gone blank now. The domain. When we put car parking there, well, the domain is not a business district other than a lot of property owned by the Hobart City Council. So. And we spend a hell of a lot of money on that area, so it's sort of appropriate to put some money back into the domain because we own it. But when it comes to commercial areas or residential areas, people pay their rates. If we're going to benefit one particular ratepayer group. Let's look at the CBD. CBD has huge amount of parking revenue. Salamanca has a huge amount of parking revenue. Why shouldn't the city and Salamanca get the same percentage spent on them from parking revenue that any other suburb does? So I thought I'd put this notice of motion up, Lord Mayor, in which hopefully the General Manager can just add to the previous report, so we don't have to have two reports, and I'm happy to accept that. And my esteemed colleague, Councillor Dutta, as he quite rightly said at the last council meeting, it's only calling for a report, so that's all I'm doing, is calling for a report. I'm also calling for the report that if the General Manager can take it on board, that he can add this to the other report to only have one report. Now, I'll just point out that the council has some values. Values are that we care about people, our community as a whole of the community, our customers, which are our ratepayers, and of course our colleagues, but we also have got accountability. We are transparent, work in high ethical and professional standards, and are accountable for delivering outcomes for our community, not just one section of the community, because if we don't expand this, all we're doing is delivering something for one section of our community, and I cannot represent just one section of the community. I'm a councillor on the City of Hobart, and I represent the whole community. Just a little reminder in regards to the original parking fund, as the General Manager can correct me if I'm wrong. Originally under the previous Act, the Hobart City Council and its parking fund used to have parking revenue that went specific back to parking and provided parking infrastructure for the city. When the Act changed, that changed, and now all the parking fund revenue goes into consolidated revenue, which subsidises the rate base. Now, I've got no problem at all if everyone would like to start that back, because I think that'd be absolutely fantastic for the city, that all parking revenue in every suburb of Hobart and the CBD goes back into a parking fund to be spent for parking. And I think that'd be absolutely amazing for the people in North Hobart. Maybe they might finally get a double-storey car park at the Condell car park. So I believe this is consistent, very consistent with what we did 2 weeks ago, and it should be voted unanimously.
Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, look, thanks, Lord Mayor. I've considered this, and I think on a question of equity and a question of it's a good timely process that we get a report at this point. It's not a bad concept. We're talking about a proportion, not all. We're talking about a proportion of the revenue. I'd very much like to hear in the report the General Manager's operational issues, or how you find it in principle in cutting the budget, as to how you would deal with this. And Alderman Zuko's correct. I mean, this used to, all the parking money went into the one fund, and I'm not sure, I don't need to question it now, but where someone wasn't providing a certain amount of parking in a development at one point, that money also went into a fund, and that fund went into the many millions of dollars. Now, you know, the reality is parking needs change over the years, cities' needs change over the years, and I imagine, without predicating what's going to be in that report will come back and talk about the value of it, and potentially the administrative issues around it as well, because it's not a legislated fiat, but we are a council and we are able to make decisions on our budget. So I think it's very worthwhile to have this issue brought back to us.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to highlight the fact that this is only a report, and I will endorse that. And the good thing about this is that it's going to be added to that report that we already have. So it'll give us a wider or a different dimension to it as well. So therefore, it is quite a good thing. And thirdly, the point that I want to make is this, the principle of equity for me is important. And I think for that particular reason, this needs to be supported. Thank you.
Councillor Councillor Harvey.
Through you, Lord Mayor, to the General Manager. In your advice, it says it's recommended that a parking benefit district policy for application across Hobart's numerous city and suburban precincts be included in the parking policy draft currently under development. Are you doing that, or would you like that to be an amendment to this to make it happen?
No, we'll be doing that anyway, because I think that's common sense to be proper to do it, so we'll be doing it anyway.
Yep. All right then, thank you.
So, Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I can't speak to the history of what was going on with parking rate, parking fee policies before, or parking revenue policies before, sorry, because like a few others, we weren't around back in those days. We don't have such a long tenure as Alderman Zirko does. But look, in regards to this, I think from a governance perspective, it's the responsible thing to do. I think if we start, whether or not we think it's a good idea in North Hobart to segment parts of our revenue earned in that precinct to be spent specifically in that precinct, we can't do it on an ad hoc basis where we say, we're going to take North Hobart revenue and keep part of it in North Hobart, not do it in the city, or not do it in Sandy Bay, or not do it in Salamanca, or whatever have you, because it is that there is this sort of who's benefiting from the policies, who's not benefiting from, who's losing out from these policies. If more money is being spent on parking in the city, why aren't the traders that are paying rates in those areas getting that same benefit that other areas are? If a broad policy is investigated into, either we say that it's the appropriate thing to do or it's not the appropriate thing to do, it should very well apply to every parking space in every precinct. If money's raised in North Hobart, or money's raised in the CBD or Salamanca or wherever have you, and we say X percentage of that revenue is to be reinvested into that area, I think that's fair. But if we start saying, look, we're going to implement this policy in North Hobart, but we're not going to implement this policy in Salamanca, I think there'd be many residents, many business owners, and many patrons of frequent areas that would be asking some questions and wondering why it's happening in some areas and not others. So I think, look, this should be something that should be broadly accepted. I think it would set a broad policy on this and give a bit of consistency and give a bit of clarity onto what the council's stance on this is. And if we do go ahead on this and we do use that money to revitalise areas and to invest in those areas, I think it's a good thing. But it has to be applicated fairly and evenly.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just want to ask a question. I think the appropriate person would be Mr. Carr, but I'll start off perhaps asking the question. And some time ago, we had a report following a question I asked about how our parking income was returning and what rate it was returning. Can we have some indication about how our parking income has returned or not? Is it still increasing at around 10% or a month?
Through you, Lord Mayor, the estimates for this year had us down about 25%. That was our budget, down 25% on last year. We're not quite hitting that, so parking has stalled. So we're a little behind in the budget this year, so probably down 30% on a normal year.
Okay, and probably just a supplementary question. It's a little bit tangential to the subject of this motion because I'm going to support this motion. We did vote, was at the end of last year. I remember a very acrimonious debate before pre-COVID era, where we were going to remove subsidies to parking, like the first 90 minutes free type stuff, or early bird parking. Is that still planning to do that? That we're going to remove those initiatives?
Through you, Lord Mayor, the early bird parking will be removed in January as per the resolution of council last year. So the car parks themselves are full every day, but most people are staying for less than 90 minutes. So council isn't actually making any money out of the car parks. The plan to return to council to assess the other programs we have is still on track, and we'll probably be bringing them, or the next of those, back to council in the first quarter next year.
Yes, thank you.
Further discussion? Can I just clarify? I think, look, I think this is a good. I think parking benefit district policy is something that lots of cities use as a way to get support for paid parking in areas, so that communities can take a percentage and reinvest it in other priorities in the street. It is a principle of, I guess, taking some of the revenue and reinvesting it in that precinct. So, that was the motivation behind the report that was going to come back to North Hobart, but there was no decision made that it was ever going to be just North Hobart only. And it's very clear from the General Manager's advice that they are planning to give us this information back to us anyway. So in a sense, the motion is fine, and the General Manager has basically said that he's doing it anyway. But I guess it gives him some direction that the council is particularly interested in this topic, and how it could be used, some of the risks and benefits and strengths and weaknesses. So I think it's totally fine, so long as the wording of the motion is that we are getting this as part of the broader look at the parking policy. Is that your understanding, Alderman
Exactly
Zucker?
what I'm doing.
Well, it just doesn't. It talks about a report just on that topic, but I just, in some ways, to reflect the General Manager's advice, we would change it to something like that advice be included in the parking policy about, a percentage of parking revenue, or just to make sure that it's clear that we're getting this advice back on this topic within the parking policy.
Lord Mayor, all I need to do is just add the words within the city as per the previous motion that the council passed 2 weeks ago, and I think that's in line with whatever we passed 2 weeks ago.
Who was the seconder for this motion? Oh, that was Alderman Thomas.
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Previous decision. Okay. So, seconder is happy with that? Okay. Can I close debate, Lord Mayor?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the reference to the broader parking policy.
Lord Mayor, it's, I'll answer it again. This was in line with the previous report to be equitable. So whatever's in that previous report, I'm just saying it's in line with the previous decision of council. Simple.
For clarification, where we had our special meeting of all councils in relation to the issue about North Hobart, it refers to that and says the council could also give consideration to the development of a parking benefit district policy, and such policy would provide a structured model to allow demand-based pricing for on-street parking to support the council's investment in public space in any precinct. So it sounds like it is in line. That's the spirit of it.
Okay, I even stated that, Lord Mayor. So, okay, Lord Mayor, we just add those words in line with the previous decision. Lord Mayor, there was just a couple of points made, and actually one made by Mr Carr, that our car parks are full. That demonstrates that we might need some more car parking in the city of Hobart to get more people to come and shop. And I think, because that's what we're about, aren't we? Bringing people in. Or we could also either invest in a new train or tram system that could assist people coming into the city, Lord Mayor. So maybe we can reinvest into their city. Lord Mayor, as I pointed out, and I think it's been stated by my esteemed colleague, Councillor Dutta, that we've got to be equitable across the board with everyone in our city, and I think by supporting this, that's what we are doing, Lord Mayor. I think I've said enough, Lord Mayor, and hopefully everyone will support this.
Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 13, City Infrastructure Committee. Councillor Harvey.
I'll move the item, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
This is the Elizabeth Street Midtown Retail Precinct proposed streetscape concept. So the recommendation, Lord Mayor, is that the draft concept designs for Elizabeth Street Midtown Retail Precinct, as marked as Amendment A to item 6.2 of the Open City Infrastructure Committee agenda of 25th November, be generally endorsed as a framework for future streetscape development in the project area, noting that the Council is not in a position to fund the implementation at this time. That any decision on the final uphill bike lane treatment be determined following the trial of uphill bike lane as part of an uphill bike lane as part of the 12-month Ready for Business pilot project. Part 3, a further report be provided to the Council in the first quarter of 2021 outlining the implementation plan, including cost estimates, financial impacts, funding sources and proposed timing. And Part 4, a detailed report addressing the potential loss of car parking within the Elizabeth Street precinct be referred to the Finance and Governance Committee at the appropriate time. So, Lord Mayor, these concept designs are very well developed with consideration of the community-based action project team principles that was tested with key stakeholders in August 2020. The results were reported to the City Infrastructure Committee at its September 2020 meeting. In October 2020, the plans were shared with the broader community for feedback. The level of support is consistent with the previous key stakeholder engagement stage, in which 70% of respondents were supportive of the draft concept. Among those that were not satisfied with the concept, the chief concerns were the reduction of car parking and the design of the bicycle lane. So I think the issue with the bike lane is that the biking community would like a separated bike lane rather than what's being proposed in the framework here. However, that's not insurmountable, and the trial, which will go ahead hopefully, will give an indication of the preferred method in the future. With regard to car parking, it's been very interesting to see how we've brought out the issue of the UTAS car park, which will hopefully become known as Midtown, where there's been 100 car parks owned by the council for a few years now, of which had an occupancy rate of about 50%. So the loss of those few car parks on the street are more than compensated for by the vacant space in the UTAS car park, which is now becoming better known. So I'm confident that that will, resolve any issues with car parking in the area. Should the council be supportive of the proposed concept, a further report would be provided next year with an implementation outline, including funding sources, cost estimates, financial implications and proposed timing of works. But I think I'll emphasise again, Lord Mayor, that this has been a really thorough consultation or engagement process over a long period of time, and we can confidently say that most people in the precinct and the greater area support what's being proposed here. And we know that because the data tells us that 70% of people support the project. And we also have confidence, well, I have confidence, and I'm sure most of the councillors and aldermen would have confidence in the process, in the engagement process, which, having spoken to a number of people in the strip, have told me, and we've received emails from, that they were very satisfied and they were very confident in the process, and some of them thought that they had achieved a consensus. So they were a bit disappointed when, at the end of the day, a few others had rejected the proposal. So I'm hoping that this gets through this part of the process here tonight and we can move on, even though we don't have the resources to be developing this project for a while. It's good to have things shovel ready, and those of us who have spoken to Infrastructure Australia and know what the process is, without having final designs and a fully thought through project, it makes it really difficult to get funding into the future. And I've heard this directly from Infrastructure Australia, where they've said there's quite a number of things that come out of Tasmania which aren't shovel ready and therefore go into the the non-fundable basket. So we need to be really cognizant of that fully funded, fully developed projects have much more likelihood of receiving funding into the future. Another element of this is the support of the University of Tasmania. They've got plans also for how they work towards their outcomes within the precinct. There's also potential that they will be able to fund certain elements of the Midtown upgrade, especially along the Melville Street area there, to complement what we're proposing in the Elizabeth Street strip. So I commend this to all of the elected representatives, and I hope tonight that we can pass this unanimously, because that's what it deserves. The process deserves recognition, and this movement into the future of mobility and the future of shopping strips needs to be understood. And we've seen it time and time again from the experts that continually inform us with their data and their peer-reviewed knowledge about how this sort of transformation of strips is really beneficial economically, socially and environmentally.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Because there has been reasonable community concerns about some aspects of this project, I did look very carefully over the weekend and days before about the community engagement, and I also dug out the community engagement framework, which is a guiding principle. And I think there are some aspects of the process. I think they've done a good job. The team that did this placemaking exercise did a good job. So this is not a criticism of the team and their job. Our role is probably to look above all that, because they're obviously excited about this project. To me, the university saying, oh, they'll hopefully use their money in lieu of rates to help their project. Just a question from to the General Manager. I thought, understanding as the university is not a ratepayer, but offered to provide funds in lieu of rates for 10 years, that we had a condition that the city decides how that money is being provided, where we spend it, not the university. And could you just clarify that, General Manager?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. The rates equivalency deed that was approved by the council makes it clear that the process is that the council and the university sit down in March of every year, which coincides with both entities' budget preparation process, and agrees the projects that they're going to go forward. So it was an agreement process rather than a council having the final say process.
The council puts up the projects.
Yeah, okay. There's a few aspects of this that are good. There are certainly the upgrade of the footpath and making them slightly wider. I support that. I use this area reasonably well by walking along. I think it looks a bit tired. It needs a bit of an upgrade. I'm uncomfortable with the way the bike path has been designed. It is basically sharing the road with cars. It is, if reading the report, that it's only block 1 will be done. There'll be the little strip of green in block 1 and no continuous bike path. As the chairman said, the bike community upset it's not separated bike path with bollards or whatever. I agree with that. If we're going to have, this is one of the major entrances to the city, or the exit from the city, then our bike paths should be of the highest standard. There is some conflicts though. And the conflicts has been pointed out by a couple of people, is that Metro are not happy, it appears. It will affect public transport. If we look to the future, this is still the major route out of town, and also the potential for a tram from the waterfront to North Hobart and further. This is stopping. It's not future-proofed for the idea of a tram or similar to go up the middle of that street, because we're actually crowding it. Extended the footpaths, trees, bike paths, small lanes, one going one way. Where is the tram going to go? Where is the light transport? Now, if Metro already have concerns about it, I have concerns about it. If you, Lord Mayor, have advocated buses, you, Chairman, have advocated buses, public transport, and here we're going to, in one of our principal roads in and out of the city, putting up a plan that will affect public transport. Now, I did do a little bit of a search. I found Geelong have had a similar project, and they just recently voted to remove the bike path at the cost of $2 million. Council voted because it wasn't working and it hindered public transport and other transport options. We've got to really be careful that, as I said, we're looking at the big picture now. If we're going to be a city with public transport, a tram to North Hobart from the waterfront is the obvious one, especially when the university residents are on the way and businesses are on the way. So we've got to be careful when it comes back to us that we've considered those things. I don't think I will vote against it because really it's a sort of a general thing, generally endorsed. The decision on the final uphill bike path treatment be determined, and then a further report about the costing.
30 seconds.
Yeah, so I'm saying, and there are people in the area which are not the direct businesses owning direct onto Elizabeth Street, in Patrick Street and so on, that have concerns about loss of parking. And I share them. And tonight we heard from the Residents Association of North Hobart who said that people don't like using multi-storey car parks because of the danger. And here we are advocating use of multi-storey car parks.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, I've just got a couple of questions for the moment, Lord Mayor. They're through you to the appropriate officer that can answer this, and it's in regards to bikeways coming from the city. Do we have a bikeway that goes up Argyle Street and then turns left at Federal Street out of the city? Can someone answer that, please?
Yes, through you, Lord Mayor, we do.
Do we have another bikeway that goes left at Federal Street and then then is going to link on to the new Campbell Street proposed bikeway to get people into the city?
Through you, Lord Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll just sit down for the moment.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And look, I think we do, as Alderman Briscoe said, we need to acknowledge what Elizabeth Street is. It's all wonderful to have the village sort of vibe, but it is a major arterial road that feeds in and out of the CBD. It has what's one of the busier roads for buses. You know, like as Alderman Briscoe said, it's a major road for public transport, and Metro's got concerns about it. If we want to talk about the data, as Councillor Harvey pointed out, yes, 70% indicated that they were supportive of it, and around 30% said that they weren't supportive of it. But if you look into the 70%, around half of that, and I say around half because I don't remember the exact breakdown, half said that they were completely happy with it, they thought it was wonderful. And the other half of that 30% said, look, they largely supported it, but they had some concerns about one or two things. And if you read into the report about what those one or two things, it's the exact same things that are listed as concerns in those that responded saying they weren't supportive. It was the on-street parking, and it was the cycle lane. So whilst we have a majority of people that are largely supportive of the project, we also have a majority of people that have concerns about those two particular issues. Now, just a question while I'm going. Well, two questions, I suppose. What do we exactly mean when we're talking about this as a framework as opposed to endorsing it as a project? And secondly, if we were to endorse this today, what would the timeline be for this to be implemented, roughly?
Mr. Noy.
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor, with these concept plan, final detailed design work needs to be done. So it simply provides a framework for officers to go away and to do that if council's of the view to proceed. Now, in terms of the timing, well, timing will depend on funding availability. We don't have necessarily funding to do this work at this point in time. The purpose would be to seek funding opportunities external to council so we could proceed. If, for example, we were able to achieve funding fairly quickly, we would need another year to complete design works and to start after the Christmas shopping period in 2022 if funding was able to be obtained. Most likely the first block being the block closest to the Hobart CBD.
So just as a follow-up, just to clarify, based on what you just said, if we got money reasonably quickly, we wouldn't be expecting to see this before 2022?
That's correct, because it does take that amount of time to complete the detailed design work to be able for us to commence in early 2022.
Thank you. So look, we've got, and thank you for that, Director. So we've got clearly a fair bit of time. This isn't something that's going to be endorsed that we need to get it out the door as quick as possible because this needs to be done. We've got a large number of people that, even those that are largely supportive, and I'm largely supportive as well. I think the area needs to be redeveloped. I think for the most part I'm quite happy with it, but there are issues with it. You've got a lot of people that have responded in similar terms. You've got you've got businesses that are supportive. You've got businesses that are not supportive. You've got businesses like the CWA, which are highly upset as to how things have progressed on this matter. But you've also got the Metro that have concerns, and also the Tasmanian Aboriginal corporations, who I don't think anyone could really argue is some political group that's sort of sitting on the pro-business or pro-car, anti-public transport agenda or anything like that. So you've got a pretty diverse group of organisations, a pretty diverse group of people that have a large number of diverse concerns with all of this. And what I found quite disappointing as to how this has all progressed is that we've had people that write in, send emails, or make consultations, say that this is wonderful, and the chair of the infrastructure committee talks about, we've got all these we've got all this wonderful feedback about all these people that think it's wonderful. We have consultation from groups like from organisations like the CWA, businesses like the CWA, as well as other members of the community who have raised concerns, and they've made those concerns public, and they've sent those concerns to the council. And the response, which was a reply all response, so everyone could see it, was no, disregard that. We don't need to listen to her, and we shouldn't be entering into an argument with her because we're not going to win it. We have groups like the Tasmania Aboriginal Corporation that make representations, and it wasn't referred to, wasn't listened to. But when there's a group that agrees with what's being put forward, we'll look at all these wonderful people that have said these things. It does seem to me that for some people in this room, consultation means we'll listen to the members of community that agree with what we're saying, and we'll completely ignore the people that disagree with what we're saying. And look, that's not the way to go about consultation. That's not the way to, we've seen it, I think, in items such as what's happening in North Hobart as well. And the reality is, we've got an item here that doesn't really have any impending deadline that we need to be highly concerned with. There's absolutely no reason why we can't take what we've got in front of us and fine-tune it to see if we can find those win-win, and we can find a way to keep as many people happy as possible. If we can't, we can't. But we're not in a rush to approve this today. Look, frankly, I'd like to see this put off. So in fact, with my final 30 seconds, I'd like to move a deferral. So that we can have this, the officers can take this and try and find a way to see if we can respond to or address some of the concerns raised by the large number of respondents, some of who supported the broader plan and some who were vocally against it. That's how you do consultation. So look, I'll move that, and I'd encourage everybody to support it. Thank you.
Alderman, I think Deputy Lord Mayor's first.
That was a deferral motion, wasn't it?
Deferral motion.
Lord Mayor, just a quick clarification. It is procedural, but you can hold it.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to accept it right now, so I'll let everyone have their say at this stage.
Lord Mayor, this is quite incredible that we have 2 years of community engagement. Two years of community engagement with various voices heard in relation to this project. I was fortunate enough to go along to the block party on Saturday and spoke with some of the businesses who have given up quite a lot of time to be involved in this as part of the project action team. And quite incredible, you know, like it's quite difficult as business owners would know to give up time to be involved in a community engagement process. You know, it takes a huge amount of commitment, and I appreciate that they have done that. And one of the comments I'll just read out. I spoke to a business owner earlier in the week, and who was an engaged participant of the Midtown Project Action Team, who praised the consultation for its thoroughness. So she praised the consultation for how thorough it was. They and most others are willing, even excited, about a trial for more people to visit and patronise the Midtown businesses. So they're looking really forward to people coming in. Sorry?
It's summer.
Sorry? I don't think I need any sort of interruption from you, Alderman Baracus. Thank you. So the business owners and those who were involved with the project action team who I spoke to found that it was a really beneficial and important thing to be involved with, and they see the benefits to their businesses of more people coming into this area, more people lingering and staying. We've got the support of the state government to put in these pods for people to have time in parklets. There is parking that is provided and considered. So the consultants have considered the parking. When Alderman Briscoe compares a Geelong project to this project, we all know that there are so many differences and variations with a place and with projects. So to compare Geelong to Midtown is like comparing apples to oranges. So I urge the council not to defer this. This is not a council that sits on its hands and doesn't go forward with things. I'd like to think that we didn't defer at the drop of a hat. I think it beggars belief that we would want to do that for, you know, like what sort of reputation do we want? Do we want to be deferring everything? It's certainly not something that is on my agenda. I want action, and we need, as Councillor Harvey has said, when he eloquently introduced this topic, that we need things that are shovel ready. So we need to make sure that we have things that are ready. And I think this would be a terrible thing not to deliver for those people who have good faith, have provided their time in good faith for this project to go ahead. So I strongly support it and urge everybody around the table to do so.
Sorry, Alderman Zucker, but I think Alderman Thomas.
Not a problem at all whatsoever.
Look, I'm supportive of the project, but I'm also, I'd like to go through you, Lord Mayor, to the Director. We've been sort of playing around with the idea of a tram through to North Hobart for a few years, and when I was in your position, Lord Mayor, I was on a couple of government committees that actually looked at the light rail, and the light rail was, to my mind, the bonus of the North Hobart to the City Link was probably the only revenue it was going to guarantee in the early times, and as a tourist route, etc. The very pretty colourful pictures here have got a metro bus, full size, well and truly within the left-hand and right-hand lane, depending on which picture you look at. What consideration has been done, and I'm not talking about a tiny little tram like that one used to run around with West Point, I'm talking about a real one, like the light rail tram, like the light rail unit. which the government only wanted to bring up to Franklin Square, but I consistently said you've got to take it through to North Hobart to at least determine the feasibility of that. Are you able to accommodate that? Recognise it in Melbourne, when the tram comes through and stops, the vehicles stop behind it. So can you do it a two-way, or is it a loop service that is, say at the start of block 3, that the loop would, in other words, the trams would hold off each other?
Through you, Lord Mayor, that scenario would need to be fully investigated. It may come at the cost of significant loss of parking on potentially on both sides, depending on the configuration. But there's been no necessarily plan to investigate in this scenario. What we're putting forward, other than travelling up the existing 2 carriageways, one way both.
Lord Mayor, I came into this chamber tonight fully prepared to support this, but I can't support this on the basis that I've got to know about that light rail. I don't want the council to be kicking an own goal here and ruining the chance of having a light rail service in the city to North Hobart. And maybe you'll be able to come back and tell us it's okay, but based on what we're hearing, it's not, if it's going to change the number of car parks and maybe change that uphill bike lane, I don't want to go out to the public with one image that is going to be broken 5 or 6 months later. And that could happen. In other words, if we go out now with the plan as it is, without investigating this the ability for the light rail to go through, then we're giving the public a perception that this is what's going to, potentially what's going to be. This other issue is a big issue. The light rail is an important issue. It cannot make or break, it could make or break that service if we can get it from North Hobart through to the city. And I think I'd want to verify that.
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor, it won't, this proposal won't make or break the light rail issue. Those issues are prevalent all the way along that route. So any changes that we're proposing today won't impact on those issues. You've got those issues all the way along Elizabeth Street, because you've got bus stops, you've got various other projections into that road reserve that are prevalent throughout Elizabeth Street, that is not unique to this location.
I'm going to need to be sure. I mean, this is this is 3 blocks we're talking about. It's a considerable amount of the area. The mall's not such. I would like to be assured that this is safe. The light rail safe within this proposal.
Ask a clarification question of the Director related to this. Director, this proposal would not preclude a light rail service. It would just be, I think, that light rail would, if it was ever funded and if it was ever to happen, would have to displace the cars and the buses and the road lanes. It's just not possible for you to have a light rail through this precinct without, it would be have to become like George Street in Sydney, which is an incredibly humongous infrastructure commitment that might happen down the track, Alderman Thomas, but I'm just trying to clarify what you're saying here, Mr. Noy.
Yeah, in fact, the state government's Hobart Transport Vision has an image of this exact layout where the light rail or the trackless tram, in fact, goes down Elizabeth Street in a one-way, two-way configuration. So, if you wanted to have a look at what the potential solution might look like, you just look up the state government's Hobart Transport Vision that spells out that exact configuration.
My question, and one which will unfortunately not be answered tonight, and which is why I'll have to support the deferral, is I want to make sure that we're not preempting. One, we've got to be very careful as a council when we go out to the consultation process. We have to let the public have the impression that this is the scale of what we're talking about. This is where the council is at the moment. Yes, it's only seeking consultation, but I've got a right as a member of the public to say the council's thinking of doing this. But if in 4 months' time we come back in here and we find that this plan, as it is at the moment, will prohibit and preempt anything like the extension of the light rail, which I reckon will get funded, Lord Mayor, at some point, and will get in place from Franklin Square through to North Hobart, then I think we've kicked ourselves an own goal. I'm just not prepared to do that.
So a couple of questions first, Lord Mayor, through you to the appropriate officer that can answer this for me. When the Darchi and Darchi development came forward for the double deck taking over 2 car parks in Murray Street, did the owner of Darchi and Darchi have to pay for all that work?
Mr. Noy.
Through you, Lord Mayor, that's correct.
Sorry, Mr. Noy, if I'm going to ask another question. Might not be you, might be Mr. Doyle, but I'll just go through the Lord Mayor to the appropriate officer. Do Darchi and Darchi pay the Hobart City Council a fee for the use of those 2 car parks?
Well, they pay an occupation licence.
Okay. Lord Mayor, I think Alderman Thomas has hit the nail on the head, and this is one of the things that everyone's got to understand. This is not going down the track of giving general endorsement of taking away car parking and putting footpaths up the road, because once you do the work, you're not going to go back. So it doesn't matter what we may or may not assume that might happen with light rail, once the footpaths are widened, you're never going to put them back. But what is interesting in this report, what is very interesting in this report, it goes, now this is about Midtown getting a group of businesses to improve their business. The uphill bike lane was the most commented upon the feature of the draft. So is it the people of the precinct that really want this? Because that was the most commented, and out of the most comments, 41 requested a higher level of bikeways. Now, I asked before the question about Argyle Street and Campbell Street, in which we've already approved to spend a considerable amount of money on bike infrastructure. Why don't we spend a little bit more money on those, which will give us the arterial out of the city up Argyle Street, like we have now? We can improve that amenity for those bike people to feel safe, and we can improve the amenity for those people going down Campbell Street to feel safe. They're both coming up Federal Street, ending up at the same spot. Why are we just building a small section of an uphill bikeway in Midtown? How that benefits the traders north of Midtown is beyond my comprehension. But furthermore, we go to the second most commented. Does anyone know what that was? The loss of car parking. So, the very factor that's going to affect the actual business people of North Hobart, of Midtown, because I've got North Hobart on my mind tonight, of Midtown, is the mere fact that they're going to lose car parking. Isn't that ironic? So it's not got to do with a bike lane. So why is this bike lane here in place? It's beyond my comprehension on how that bike lane is going to help those people. Now, when you actually look at that street, if you seriously want to do benefits to the traders along there, you can do one or two things. Put a trial there so that every person who wants to have a deck or something built in front of them, they build it, they pay for it, and they pay us a royalty for it. See how many want to do it and test it out. Does that affect the people that want to walk to the city? No, it doesn't, because it takes away from the footpath, it puts it onto the car parking. Yes, we're going to have loss of car parking, of course, but we're going to pay a rate for it. Let's see how it goes for all those traders up there on a trial basis. Then what we could do, Lord Mayor, we don't have to wait for funding down the track. We can give this offer to all those traders up there who want to take on board a car park in front of themselves. Build it yourself, just like Darchie and Darchie did, just like Kultura and a number of other people have done so over the years. So we don't have to worry about the funding. We don't have to worry about the fact that if we do widen the footpath and we want to put a tramway in the future, we haven't got concerns. Look, Lord Mayor, I'm sorry. When you actually read, it's the business people, the bike shop, the sewing machine shop, they want parking in front of themselves. Ironically, the bike shop wants parking in front of them. Read the report. It's amazing. I'm sorry. This Midtown is being developed firstly for people who want to ride bikes out of the city. That is 10%, less than 10% of our population.
30 seconds.
Lord Mayor, I need an extension of a minute because I'm enjoying this. Because I find this report absolutely very similar to the one of the North Hobart. So can I be a minute extension, please?
Moved by Alderman Brackus. Seconded by Alderman Brackus. All those in favour say aye.
Now, it's said that we want something shovel-ready, Lord Mayor.
Do we need to have a vote?
Oh, let's have a vote. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, all those in favour of an extra minute say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
Thank you very much. Shovel-ready. How important is it that we haven't even got funding, we haven't even looked at funding, and we want something shovel-ready? We haven't got funding. I'm Italian. I use my hands.
I might move away so I don't get...
Yeah, you won't. Don't worry. Now, the other thing too, I'm quite concerned about. There's no electric car charging station here. This has absolutely baffled me because then Councillor Harvey won't be able to go charge his car up there. Unbelievable.
Big car park right next door.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I didn't interrupt Councillor Harvey. Lord Mayor, look, if we as elected members want to do our best for this city, we want to do our best for the business people, right? Let's make sure we find the right balance. Let's not just go out and support a potential disaster because most of the respondents here were people that ride bikes. And I think it's about time that we looked at the reality here and looked at what is really happening with this consultation.
Alderman Briscoe.
Question, Lord Mayor, and it's just a minor one, but uphill, whoever, through you, Lord Mayor, whoever can answer this, uphill, the photo montages we've got, the tables are flat on the ground, but the bikes and cars are going like that. Does that mean there'll have to be platforms all the way up Midtown so that the tables and whatever get put there? And how is that going to affect the footpath? Yeah, do they have to have ridges up?
Yeah, no, through you, Lord Mayor, the widened footpath will be same as the grade of the existing footpath. So, yeah. So
as a supplementary question, the grade will be the same as the road.
Yeah.
So you're going to have sort of people sitting on a hill, basically.
Yeah,
the table going that way.
Yeah. They'll, as they do already, they will have to sit on a slope. Yeah.
We haven't got any outside dining in that part, have we?
There are some that have the stools and the like adjacent to their building line. Yes, yeah, they do.
Just interesting engineering problem.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Just a few questions because I have spoken, and I might start with. Just wonder, Alderman Zuko, do you mind just bringing the volume down a little bit because it's very, very loud.
Lord Mayor, I'll endeavour to control my passion for this city.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Through you to the Director, what is the major route for bike riders from North Hobart coming into the city?
through you, Lord Mayor, it is along Elizabeth Street.
Right, thank you. And so it's quite a, I have a few questions, Director. So it's quite a number of you know, like it's quite a large volume coming down Elizabeth Street, and it's quite a narrow street, is that right?
Yes, in fact, Elizabeth Street is the less trafficked street, and hence why it's attractive to cyclists.
Right, thank you. And presumably people who ride bikes also work in the city and frequent the city. So I don't know if it's a question you can answer.
Yes, like vehicles, they do like to choose their own path. They will choose.
And a final question, is the state government funding, looking to fund the trial of the parklets?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep, and further question, sorry. So the parklets, I think, have been considered, and the whole plan has been considered by members of the Access Advisory Committee as well, you know, as far as access onto the pods go?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank
we
you.
need to make a provision for
sorry, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. Just again, a few questions. Is this simply a concept design proposal and nothing is set in concrete as yet? Question number one.
No.
It is a fairly refined concept that we've gone through 2 years of detailed consultation with the public, as well as understanding what's under the ground in terms of infrastructure and the like, as well as understanding the flow of vehicle traffic, public transport and active transport mode. So we've gone to some length of understanding the movement and physical environment that we're designing in.
Thank you. The second question is, now I've been hearing, and it is my understanding, that this whole consultation process and the participation and the active participation by council, they have been involved in this whole process. Is that correct?
Sorry. Yes, Mr. Knight.
Yes, there's a project action team. Well, you know, it started off in 2018, at the end of 2018, extending postcard invitation to give us the people's thoughts, traders, businesses and visitors. And then we moved on, as we successfully did in Newtown and in Lena Valley with a project action team, where we extended invitations to traders, all traders, business owners, property owners and customers and the wider community to be part of a team that worked through the opportunities and the constraints within the street to identify improvements that met their aspirations and needs. And as a result of that, they came up with some fairly important principles and objectives, and from that we developed the design.
Thank you. And the final question through you, Chair, is this, that there are some concerns have been expressed, and when the consultation process was in process, did these concerns come up, and these different organizations or individuals, did they come up and contribute, or they were not part of the process?
Yeah, look, as previously reported, yes, those concerns were well understood. And as I've indicated before, you know, this street is relatively narrow. It's not a wide street, and to meet everyone's expectations or aspirations was simply not possible. So there has been compromise made. You know, there's some instances where people would like a protected separated cycleway, but to do that you need to compromise on the footpath width. You'd need to compromise on car parking provision and the like. So we've been careful in trying to give people as much as we can within the physical constraints that we're working within. And And I've been very impressed with the way that the officers have gone about it, engaging as they have, and developing this concept to achieve as much as it can.
Further discussion? Councillor Dutta? Oh, Councillor Sherlock.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I've actually been rather entertained hearing some of the comments tonight. Sometimes I feel as though the decibel that people speak at is sometimes mistaken for quality, but that, again, we're mistaken by that. And sometimes the theatrics within this chamber is about as amusing as, going to the zoo and visiting monkeys.
Point of order. That is actually attacking me, and I got to say I resent anyone calling anyone a monkey. I think that is absolutely appalling.
I wasn't actually calling anyone.
That is appalling.
Councillor Sherlock, I think
appalling.
Alderman Zuko has taken that your comments are addressed to him, even though they weren't. But maybe if you could just withdraw the.
Well, I don't withdraw the comment because they weren't aimed at anybody. I was making a general observation on behaviour.
That's appalling, Lord Mayor.
Point of order. It said like the behaviour, and I spoke here today that it was like a zoo. So I think that's very unprofessional, and I think we should be withdrawn.
Thank you for that.
Has it been withdrawn?
Can I ask you to find a different way of describing
Yes,
how you
sure,
felt
I'll
about the
find a different
theatrics,
way.
please?
Drawn, Lord Mayor.
That's what I've asked you to do.
I want withdrawn and restated it anyway. The councillor. Sorry.
I won't withdraw it. I will restate.
This is inappropriate.
I will restate what I was saying instead of using.
Lord Mayor, we are not monkeys.
I understand.
And it's got to be withdrawn.
I've asked Councillor Sherlock to
And ask Councillor Sherlock to withdraw it again.
Now be quiet and listen to what's going to happen.
I've asked Councillor Sherlock to rephrase what she was saying.
And withdraw. Lord Mayor, I want an apology in this chamber of being called a monkey.
You weren't called a monkey.
No, we were all called monkeys. It's like being in a zoo. Now, I'm creating a zoo now. This is inappropriate.
Okay, Alderman Zuko, if you would mind sitting down, I've made a ruling on the point of order, which is that I've asked Councillor Sherlock to rephrase her intervention about the theatrics, which I presume she will do now. If you could, please, Councillor Sherlock.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I appreciate that. I will just continue with what I was saying, which was about the theatrics. It wasn't actually specifying any particular alderman or councillor, and that's my final on that. I would like to go ahead and talk about the things that were actually stated, which, I agree with what Alderman Barakis was saying. Just because we disagree with somebody, it doesn't mean that we still cannot consult people. And so I would like to go ahead and point out what the consultation process actually was. And so that was in December 2018, the postcard launch, February, March 2019, the issues and the vision, April, May 2019, directions and options, May 2020, an update, and it just goes on further and further. And as has been already pointed out, it was a 2-year process. So I believe that there has been a substantial amount of consultation. I'll now go on to the issue that the Director spoke about. Number one, the parklets that are to be funded by the state government. He also spoke about the state government's transport vision, and he thoroughly and concisely and based on facts showed us from this evidence that any changes with regards to the trams will not actually impact a tram at all. These issues are prevalent, and so I almost see this as that particular issue as a smoke and mirrors kind of situation, to pull something such as that as an issue as to why we would disagree on this. I honestly do not see the relevance based on the facts.
Point of order.
Yes.
I raised it, Councillor Sherlock, because it was quite clear from the answer from the Director that I wasn't satisfied. I was prepared to support this tonight.
Yeah,
It was quite clear that it was not answered properly in terms of my view of needing to be convinced.
sure.
Well, that's fair enough, and I totally accept
I don't think
that.
it's a point of order, Alderman Thomas. You've obviously both got a different view on that, but I think it was
Point of
raised
clarification from Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, point of clarification. Thanks, Alderman Thomas.
And I'll go ahead and once again say I fully accept that point, but once again, as the Director pointed out, the State Government's Transport Vision, I think, actually dealt with that issue thoroughly. So I didn't actually see that as an issue for why I would not be...
Once again, point of clarification, the State Government wasn't looking at this model when it was putting the colourful picture out of two trams going past each other.
Councillor Sherlock, please.
Thank you very much. And then finally, I suppose it must most certainly be made clear on what we are actually voting on. And we are actually voting on a draft concept design. What must also be made categorically clear is that, as the Director has pointed out, some of the surveying stuff has already been done as well. The engineers or the surveyors have looked at the various issues, such as where the trees will go, which will also canvass the water pipes, the laying of mains, and all of those issues have also been identified as well. So, you know, to me, I initially was not going to support this either, similar to Alderman Thomas. I went ahead and did, you know, a lot of my own reading. I went down to the Midtown Block Party as well and talked to the businesses as well.
Must have gone down the zoo as well.
Excuse me, Alderman Zuko, don't interrupt, thanks.
Sorry,
No, it's all right, just continue, please, Councillor Sherlock.
Yeah, there just seems to be a bit of, and I'll refrain from saying that, but yeah, so to me it's really clear on the facts, and my own research that I've done, reading the reports, going down and talking to the businesses as well. You know, I think this should really be supported. I think the officers have done a wonderful job on this, and they've actually been thorough about this. And as a result, I have changed my view on this, and I will be supporting it on the basis of the points that I've outlined. And in closing, I will say categorically and emphatically that I called nobody a monkey in this chamber. I was talking about the theatrics that exists within this chamber, and if people cannot make that distinction, we really need to understand the differences in what an expression...
Lord Mayor, I believe that we need to listen to the tape, so that way there we can hear exactly what was said, and don't worry, I'll ensure that everyone gets a copy of it.
But, okay.
Thank you for that point of clarification. That sort of was actually stated.
All right, the word monkey's allowed to be used in this chamber now.
Can we just continue with the debate, please? Councillor Sherlock, have you got anything further to add?
No, I actually don't think I have anything further, except for the fact that I will be supporting this concept design. Thank you very much, Norman.
Okay. Alderman Briscoe.
Just some further questions. Through you, Lord Mayor, to the Director, have we got statistics about the number of cyclists that use Elizabeth Street? Is it similar to Argyle Street, which I believe is 12 a day?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor, we do have. I'd need to take those on notice and provide them.
So on notice, also, I've just done a Google Earth of Elizabeth Street in that area, and I can't find any outside tables. Could you provide the addresses of the tables that you said there were there in Elizabeth Street? On notice,
I didn't necessarily imply that there was tables. I said that there were stools.
Stools.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Is there further discussion, please? Any further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. Just few points. Firstly, with regards to the issue of consultation, I'm quite satisfied from listening to the facts and the timeline that we have talked about, that it started in 2018, and there has been consultation with the community. Diverse groups of people have been consulted, and the report states that quite clearly and categorically. So in my own view, I'm quite satisfied that the consultation process has been quite fair and reasonable. Because of the duration of time, it was a consultative process, it was a participatory process where people participate and contributed. So I'm quite happy with that consultation process. Secondly, the other point which is important to me is that this council was actively involved in this whole process from 2018. If this council was involved in this process, then we are party to this. We have been party to the decision making. If we didn't call this out earlier on, then we did not perform our duties or role, as it were. And I'm guilty of that, if I was party of that. So therefore, I think that the staff have put together a very substantive, a very extensive and a detailed report, which I'm quite proud and happy of. So therefore, that is the second point. Third point is this, that the community engagement is very, very vital. I went today for 2 hours and walked down the streets and interviewed about 20 traders. Out of the 20 I spoke to, 2 of them very strongly opposed it. One was the lady at CWA, if I remember correctly, because of the parking issue and the parking problem. I then spoke to a number of other people. More than 75% of the traders agreed and supported that it was a good idea, a good concept to go along. I spoke also to a number of people who were walking there. And altogether, I spoke to more than 40 people. And I was quite satisfied doing my own little anecdotal evidence, as it were, that I was satisfied with this. So for me, while I agree that there may be some truths, there is maybe some arguments which can be supported for a deferral, why didn't we do all this, take all this on board and spoke to others to bring this into play? It appears that we are simply going to not support this because of some of the concerns that have been raised, and therefore I think we were remiss in taking that on board. So I will support this, and I think a good job has been done. Thank you.
Question, Lord Mayor. Say, for example, a deferral motion does come up. That doesn't mean we don't support the principle. A deferral motion means that we need more further information. So it's a clarification that the Councillor Dutta said something different there. That if we vote against this, we're not supporting it, which is not correct.
All right. Any other contributions? Okay, well, I'm going to have a few words before Alderman Harvey sums up. Oh, actually, and then we'll also do the deferral motion before that. Okay, look, I really am disappointed with the nature of the debate tonight, because I do think that this way some of the language that's been used to describe what is an excellent process that's been run by this council for 2 years by our professional staff, working with a whole range of stakeholders, including business people that have given an incredible amount of their time to be
Point of order, Lord Mayor. No one has criticised the consultation.
I have heard criticism.
No, in this council chambers tonight. Okay, well, I'll be looking at the tape. I don't think anyone criticised the consultation. You made an incorrect statement. Thank you.
I don't agree. What I've heard is a lot of criticism of the process. I've heard about a potential disaster. I've heard about people raising a lot of concern that we've come up with completely the wrong plan and it needs to be deferred and we have to sort of re-investigate. Now, what I want to speak about is that this has been an incredibly credible process, and it's also been something that is well overdue. The city, and this part of the city, is full of people. In this area, in the last 2 years, in the last few years, we've seen 2 UTAS residential developments, one still coming online. We've seen the Rocks apartments being developed. We've seen 80 Elizabeth Street, a new hotel. We've also got the hotel around the corner, the Crown Plaza. The apartments at the RACT apartments and their site is going to be coming online with a few years. This city is becoming full of a lot of people on foot, and this plan, the key part about this plan is getting this street, which is full of people, full of businesses, full of life, giving this street some love and giving it a makeover and beautifying it, making it better for people. That has been on this council's agenda ever since the Yarn-Gell report, which identified Elizabeth Street as an important street for people. And we've gone through this massive process, very consultative, lots of data, lots of research, lots of conversations, lots of asking people what they think. We've tried to modify it in light of some people's concerns, but ultimately, people, it is a balance, and we have to be the ones to make a call. I think this is a very practical plan. It does accommodate what's possible within the street. It recognises the reality that we have a street that's becoming very, very full of people and activity and recreation and hospitality, and we really need to invest in that space and make the most of it. Metro will still be able to use Elizabeth Street, and if there's ever a tram, there is plenty of room for a tram, and a tram would need wide footpaths and be a people-friendly street as is in George Street. But that is so far down the track that it's just not really something that we need to consider at the moment. But there would be room for a public transport service, but not the public transport service and cars and footpaths and parking. It's just not possible. So it would, if this becomes a light rail street, it'll become a light rail street without parking and lots of people jumping in often on the tram, and this plan allows for that. So I'm not concerned about that, but it's so far off in the future that it's that at the moment what we're doing is investing in this really fantastic street. I'm very proud of the process. What we're doing tonight is simply signing off on a plan. And it's the credibility of the council is at stake. I mean, if we're willing to kind of just throw out 2 years of work of people that have engaged very positively.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. No one's suggesting throwing out 2 years of work at all. That's
yes,
not that. That's been made very clear.
That it sends Alderman
no, we're
Brackus.
talking about fine tuning it.
So excuse me, Alderman Brackus, but the people that I've spoken to see that deferring it is about throwing it out and saying that their work doesn't matter. Now that might not be your view of it, but that's the opinion that has been given to me, and I'm just relating it to you.
I've had an alternative view put to me.
Well, I don't. That's fine, Alderman Briscoe, but that doesn't deserve you being interrupting me to have my say. My say is that I'm telling you what I think and what people have told me, and that's legitimate.
And I've had other people say that.
Okay, so I'll wrap up now. But look, you know, this is it's a good plan. It's had a lot of work. Not everyone's happy, but everyone has been heard. Everyone's had some input into the process, and certainly compromises have been made. But I think, you know, we've got to get on with this for the credibility of this organisation and the work that's been done, and I strongly support it.
Well said.
Sum up?
No, I think we've got a procedural motion first. So Alderman Bracks' a motion to defer. Would someone like to second that? Alderman Zucker? We need a...
Sorry, could I just clarify through you, Lord Mayor, to the GM?
No.
Sorry, yes.
So the rules change every 5 minutes. Sorry, General Manager.
Motion ahead of my summing up.
Because if
I'm asking the General Manager.
Well, it's a matter for the Lord Mayor, but in theory, under the regulations, it says that a procedural motion is to be taken in preference to all other matters before it. So the Lord Mayor allowed the debate to go. So in fairness, it's a decision for the Lord Mayor as to whether or not she's prepared to accept the procedural motion or not.
look, I find this extraordinary. One week.
No, Alderman Zucker, I don't need this at the moment. I'm just going
You don't need this. I'm sorry. I was willing. Oh no. The General Manager, no, this is a point of clarification, right? The General Manager has stated that we need someone to second this. I was willing to second it before. If the General Manager had told me then, I would have been able to second it.
Okay, so General Manager, we need someone
this is ridiculous.
to second Alderman. Do you want to second a deferral motion? You don't have to vote.
More than happy to second the deferral motion. Yeah.
Okay.
Apparently this rule has been implemented.
Changes every 5 minutes.
Okay, no, so excuse me. There's no need for that. The Chair is accepted the seconder of the motion, and we're going to put the procedural motion to defer this item. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, please. All those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Coates, Alderman Baracus, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Against?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
So, Alderman Harvey, if you'd like to sum up on the substantive motion.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Elizabeth Street is, or has the potential to be one of the great high streets of Australia, from the waterfront through to North Hobart. I don't think there's any doubt that its potential is huge, and that requires it changing over time in order to reach that, recognition. And this is part of that. These 3 blocks are really important to get things started. North Hobart's tired. It does need a renovation as well. Other parts of Elizabeth Street are tired. I think the mall's tired as well. But over time, we will see Elizabeth Street become one of the great high streets in the country. When it comes to a tram, and as Alderman Thomas has said, he has concerns about being able to accommodate a tram. But what you'll probably end up with, which could happen at any point in the future, is the trackless tram model. So the heritage trams, I don't feel, will ever be a viable solution for moving people from the waterfront to the State Cinema. And I think that's where it would terminate, because I think the push has been to have a tram that ran to North Hobart and terminate at the State Cinema. So it's not a transport tram, it's a tourist tram. So I think there's a different thing we've got to consider. The trackless tram would probably be feasible, whereas digging up the road all the way through to put in millions of dollars worth of steel into the road is not, I think, something we would be pursuing into the future. So I hope that the concept of the tram, in your mind, Alderman Thomas, doesn't stop you from supporting this project tonight, because I think it's something that will fit in the future when the time is right, and the design, the design that's been put forward, I don't think would exclude that from occurring. But that said, it might also mean that further up the road, there would be the same issues with removing parking. So all the way from one end of Elizabeth Street to the other, it will be contested. The third point I'd like to make is that I've been here before. This is déjà vu, this debate. And if we go back in history, Davey Macquarie went from 60 to 50. It was contested. I don't know whether it was our decision though.
That's new information.
New information. We had contested issues all across Hobart. Yarn Gal's been raised already. Many of the projects that Yarn Gal suggested were contested. We've now completed most of them. There were cars parked all over the waterfront, for example. There were cars parked everywhere. Slowly they've been taken away, but every time it was contested. Whenever we tried to change speed limits, it was contested. So this is just another part of that process of changing a city. So, and I expect there to be contests for future projects in Hobart as well. So this is the normal process that happens in every city across the world. But ultimately, we get the outcome we're looking for. We have in Hobart on numerous occasions. 30 seconds, okay. So I hope we do have the numbers tonight to keep pushing this forward. Like we've said in the report, it's a draft. It's not the final. It's pretty close, I would imagine, to what we're hoping to achieve in this strip. And I think the greater good outweighs a few people who have been disappointed by the process. No, the strip is really important to the future of Hobart, and I think we should be moving ahead.
Thanks. Okay, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
Aye.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Coates, Councillor Ewan, Alderman Thomas. Oh, sorry, Lord Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Coates, Councillor Ewan, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, the Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Okay, against? Against?
Alderman Zuko and Alderman Barakis.
Okay, now we're moving on to item number 14. Which is Collins Court Stage 2 consultation. Alderman Harvey.
I forgot,
Councillor
still me.
Harvey.
Okay. Lord Mayor, I think Collins Court's been... I'll move the item. Yep.
By Deputy Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, Collins Court I think's been a relatively good success, the first stage of the upgrade. The murals, the street furniture, the use of the space. So I think it's been a really successful stage one. Stage two adds to that success, and I hope everybody's had a chance to look at the designs. And this is a proposal to, I'll read it out so I can just remind myself. The Council endorsed the design shown in Attachment A to item 6.3 of the Open City Infrastructure Committee for the purpose of stakeholder and wider public engagement, noting that the Council's not in a position, like we are with nearly everything now, to make a capital investment in the project at this time. The outcomes of the stakeholder and wider public engagement process be subject to a further report to the Council in 2021. So this is for community engagement process to look at stage two of the Collins Court project.
Okay, any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 15.
McRoby's Gully Good Neighbour Agreement Working Group. This is the draft terms of reference.
Seconded by Alderman Thomas.
The City entered into a Good Neighbour Agreement between the McRoby's Gully Waste Management Centre and the South Hobart community in March 2017. The agreement was implemented to increase the provision of information and advice in relation to the operations and future development of McRoby's Gully Waste Management Centre. As the arrangements now matured, it's proposed to formalise and adopt a terms of reference. So I think this is just the next stage of that relationship. So I think this is an important thing to do, formalise the relationship and formalise who's part of that reference group.
Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 16.
Item 16. This is a request, Lord Mayor. I'll move the item.
Seconded by Alderman Thomas.
A request to store a historic tram at the Queen's Domain Quarry. So this is a dilapidated tram that was once part of the Hobart tram fleet, and we've had a request to store it at the Quarry depot. The proponents will meet the ongoing costs, and they'll have to make arrangements with council as per the number of recommendations there.
Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Items carried unanimously. Item 17 is Community Culture and Events Committee. Councillor Sherlock.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So the 2 points of all the recommendations have been outlined there, as people can obviously see, but just to give you a brief overview, the major cultural organisation grant supports ongoing program and operational funding for cultural organisations that meet specific eligibility criteria. And before I go on, I'll just move that item.
Seconded by Councillor Harvey.
The only grant awarded through a competitive process, which is not project-based. The major cultural organisation grant funding allocation for 2020-21 is $100,000 from an overall budget of $1.19 million allocated for the grants program. The annual grant is generally open for applications in June each year. However, this was not possible in 2020. All contracts will expire on 31st December 2020. Half of the applicants have received funding through a triennial agreement, and the other half have received annual funding. The proposal to extend grant agreements by 12 months will support activity for 2021 and ensure there is no gap in support, in line with the City's response to provide compassionate support for organisations being affected by COVID-19. The major cultural organisation grant would return to being a competitive grant round in June 2021 and 21 plus, and the major cultural organisations will be informed of this proposal and will be supported through the next steps by officers. Thank you.
Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Now we're up to item 18, the joint meeting of all council committees. You've got the recommendation in front of you. Would someone like to move that?
Alderman Zuko was the chair of that meeting.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'll just move the recommendation as it went through the
Seconded
committee
by
process.
Alderman Briscoe. Any discussion? Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think I won't sort of engage in too much discussion on this one because I think we only just had it just before the council meeting started. But it was advised that rather than moving the amendment in the previous committee that I'd move it in council. So I'll do that now. Do I need to read it out again, or can we get that read out?
You need to read it out again.
Okay. No. This was the addition yeah. The amendment read that the general manager be delegated to revise the proposed questions and/or develop new questions in regards to the future of Condell Place car park, taking account of the feedback provided by the North Hobart Traders Association and their submission dated Monday, the 30th of November 2020. Lord Mayor, I'd move that, and I'll just speak very briefly on it.
Is that a new part 4, or is that, what is that?
The part 4 one was done in committee. This is an additional.
Yes, but where do you propose to put your amendment?
As in, new part 4.
Part 4.
Yeah.
Part 4.
You meant part 4 of the questions. Yes, new part 4.
It is contradictory to part 1, though. That's the concern. It's sort of contrary to part 1.
Right.
So it's General Manager.
I just want to clarify, because part 1 is actually approving the 10 questions.
Yep.
I think Alderman Brackus's amendment is actually not approving part 1, but giving me the delegation to amend the questions in light of the discussion. Is that correct? So
yeah. Look. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll make it as an amendment to part 1 then.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, continue.
I haven't got a second yet, but I can continue to speak.
Is there a seconder for Alderman Brackus' amendment?
Can I just clarify something? So we've approved the 10 questions. This is through you to the General Manager. We've approved the 10 questions. Now Alderman Brackus is proposing an amendment to one of those 10 questions. Is that what we're...
With the amendment we did in committee, that's done.
No, I understand that, but I'm just trying to work out what the impact of the amendment will be and where it fits.
This is the issue of clarity, and this is probably where we need to, through you, Lord Mayor, speak to Alderman Brackus. But my understanding is that part 1, the 10 questions, would be substituted with Alderman Brackus' amendment, which is effectively delegating it to me to do the questions on the basis of the debate that's been held tonight. Is that correct? Through you, Lord Mayor?
That's the way to do it.
So it's a foreshadowed, I think, isn't it?
Well, no, it doesn't change. It's an amendment, Lord Mayor. It doesn't negate the motion. It's just changing 10 part 1.
Just gives delegation to the GM.
We've done all the work.
All right, Alderman Brackus, would you like to... Alderman Brackus, would you like to speak to your amendment?
I'll speak to it. Look, Lord Mayor, look, I think and it was said in the committee, what we had before us in committee compared to 2 weeks ago, I think is a night and day improvement. I think it does actually come closer to addressing, many of the questions that started this whole discussion in the first place, that being the issue of the car park and the issue of Condell Place. But I think there are still elements that, the Traders Association has been raising for years, as Alderman Zuko would attest to, and so would Mr. Kelly. But that haven't been really nutted down to in the actual recommendations in the questions themselves. There was a bit of a, there was a bit of a, high level of clarity onto certain questions regarding bicycle paths, and then a bit of vaguity as to the issue of Condell Place, and that was fixed up a little bit or somewhat in the amendments. But I think if we want to take, the issue seriously and take the consultation seriously, which has definitely been a topic of discussion for tonight, then the representations that we got from the North Hobart Traders on the 30th, I don't have the date on me anymore. The 30th of November. We do need to take those on board, and I think if we can't, I think the appropriate thing to do is to let the General Manager, look at that and respond to it, and if the questions that we have adequately respond to that, then so be it. But I think there does need to be that room to add those questions in there. That if people want more parking, or people want to address those concerns that the North Hobart Traders have raised, they can tick a box, or they can answer the question and say so. But if they don't, then they will say opposite, and that's how the consultation process works. But if we're leaving questions out of that, especially questions that one of the 2 main stakeholder groups in the North Hobart area is the other North Hobart traders, the other being the Residents Association, or the Neighbourhood Association, sorry, then we are missing out a large part of the process and consultation, making sure that we're asking the right questions that we want answered, unless we don't want those questions answered. But look, and I'll make the point, this wasn't, and the wording of this was in no way intended to exclude, the Residents Association, but in their representations, they said that they were happy with the question, so I didn't feel it necessary to include them in this particular amendment. But look, I'd commend this, and I think that we can, and I think the General Manager, I'd put the faith in him on this one, that we can fine tune that and get a set of questions that does accurately, or does ask the right questions, so we can get the right answers and know what the people of Hobart actually want out of North Hobart.
Alderman Thomas.
Through you to the General Manager, are you satisfied? Because this is almost taking us, I'm just concerned it's going to put some real uncertainty into the situation. Can you just let me know, General Manager, we've already amended question 4, action 4, to read the current operation of Condell Place as a car park be maintained and include long-term car parking options and or multi-storey purpose uses. Does that pick it up in terms of what the traders have asked for? Because it seems to me if you've got include long-term car parking options, one would assume that means a potential redevelopment of, if I'm reading it, long-term and or multi-storey purpose uses would seem that if the public's looking at it, they'd say they'd look at it and say multi-storey purpose uses, then it's going to be built up, or could be if they wanted it to be. Are you satisfied with that?
Look, I've probably got two things to say in response to that question, Lord Mayor. One is I was in the joint meeting, I did listen to the comments made by the traders, I did listen to the comments made by the Community Association. What I did pick up from that is that they were both largely happy with the survey as drafted, but there was some clarification around Condell Place, so part 2 picks that up with part 1. The other point I would make, Lord Mayor, given the sensitivity around this issue, I would be comforted by a council decision that it was happy with the survey.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak to the amendment?
I won't speak, but I have a question. Just to clarify, I think there's a few of us who are confused. By accepting this amendment, we then throw out the 10 questions that we spent time debating.
By accepting the amendment, it's in substitution of part 1, so that's correct. That's the technical effect of the amendment. If it got up, part 1 would go, and Alderman Barakis' amendment would replace part 1.
So we lose the 10 questions.
However, what I understand Alderman Barakis is saying is that there's a delegation to me, and the amendment is basically, the intent behind the amendment is that they're largely happy with the 10 questions. It's just the General Manager has a delegation of discretion to pick up comments that were made by the comments that were made in the meeting. That's how I take it.
Does it come back to us?
As per the amendment.
All right, look, I won't support the amendment. I think you've got it covered in part 1, Roman numeral 2. Question 4, action 4 be amended to read, the current operation of Condell Place, the car park, be maintained. So I would have should. Do we phrase it as a question? If it's going to be there at all. So what's the intent? The intent of this is to try and find out whether or not there's interest in maintaining Condell Place as a car park or turning it into a multi-storey car park. That's the nub of all this. So you've got two sides, those who would really like to have a multi-storey car park and those who don't. And is that the question we're trying to ask?
I think the question, through you, Lord Mayor, the question in Roman numeral 2 of part 1 needs to be read in the context of the overall question that starts off question 4. So that's just another box that goes in question 4 that's in the survey.
Okay, all right. No, I've got. Okay, all right then. But anyway, I think we've got it covered, and I won't be supporting another amendment. I just think it's superfluous, and we spent a lot of time working this through. We've deferred it. It's gone away. It's come back, and I'm satisfied that the joint committee has done a reasonable job. I don't think it needs any more tinkering.
Speaking to the amendment, Alderman.
Yes, I'm speaking to the amendment, Lord Mayor. Sorry, General Manager, but I think you've got it wrong, and I'll explain to you why. The 10 questions are in regards to the questions as per this questionnaire. This is an amendment regarding one component of those 10 questions. The one component of those 10 questions being the Condell car park. We need to read the draft amendment very, very closely and very, very carefully. The General Manager be delegated to revise the proposed questions and or develop new questions in regards to the future of the Condell car park. It's in regards to the future of the Condell car park. Okay, and it's basically in taking into account the feedback provided by the North Hobart traders in their submission dated the 30th of November. So all the General Manager's got to do is look at the submission, see if there's any questions that are relevant only to one component of this precinct plan, not the 10 questions, just the one single component being the Condell car park. I'm sorry, this is a point 4. It is not relevant to point 1, and it doesn't overtake point 1. We're actually complicating it by trying to put it into point 1 because it's relevant to one particular point, which is the Condell car park. I just cannot understand that the comments made that there's an argument on one side of the fence to the other side of the fence in regards to the Condell car park. Whether it's, I'll try and lower my voice and not be. Yeah, it's okay. I didn't do it. I didn't do it for you, Councillor. Considering where it's Alderman Zuko to you, if you don't mind. I call everyone alderman in the chamber.
Actually, could we get back to the debate, please? No interruption.
I didn't interrupt anybody. I just said something and everybody interrupted, Lord Mayor. Okay. Yes, we're in a zoo, aren't we? Lord Mayor, so it's really relevant to one component. I'm sorry, as I said, we are making something out of nothing, and I urge Councillor Alderman Barakis and the seconder of the motion to ask for it to be a point 4, not be part of point 1. It's an amendment to the overall thing in relative point to Condell car park. Through you, Lord Mayor, if I may ask Alderman Barakis a question. Yes. Alderman Barakis, the amendment, do you only consider it refers to any components of the 10 questions that refer only to the Condell car park? Sorry?
Sorry, repeat the question.
The amendment, is the amendment relevant only specifically to the Condell car park as per the 10 questions? Yes. Okay. So that clarifies that. It's regarding the Condell car park. So we've got that clear. So I urge Alderman Barakis to consider asking for it to be a point 4. So that way there, it takes away all the confusion. Lord Mayor, like I said before earlier, I want to repeat what I said before, because there is not two sides of the argument with Condell. There's not those people that want a car park or a multi-car park and those that don't, because you know what? I was at the traders meeting the other day with 20 people. They all want to see a multi-purpose facility there that provides car parking, probably housing, and also a space for the public. And that is what I have been saying actively for years. But everyone wants to point to the fact that all we want to do there is build a car park. As I've explained earlier, my vision for that space is 2 levels of car parking, hopefully some accommodation, take it right over to the Chinese Community Centre and over the chemist. And as I explained earlier, could you imagine a street party of people on the balcony overlooking North Hobart? Lord Mayor...
Alderman Zuko, if you could just stick to the amendment rather than the sort of going back to the substantive motion.
Well, I'm speaking to the amendment and the motion, Lord Mayor. I'm allowed to speak to the motion as well.
Yeah, I know, there's just a lot.
I'm speaking to the amendment, and I'm not going to get up again, Lord Mayor. I can only get up once and speak. So I can speak to the amendment thing. Unless you can let me speak again, I'll get up and speak on the motion. What would you like me to do?
I'd like you to speak to the amendment and just...
Am I allowed to get back up and speak to the motion?
You are, yes.
Okay, I'll sit down then.
Okay. Anyone else speaking to the amendment?
One speak.
I just want clarification because I thought probably Alderman Barakis is trying to make question 9 better. Question 9 is, should the future use and development of Condell Place be considered as a part of a longer term precinct plan and in line with the place vision for North Hobart? Yes or no? Which seems ridiculously polar. So is that what Alderman Barakis is trying to do with his amendment? Trying to fix up question 9?
Look, it's question 9, but it's the topic of Condell Place in general. And can I, just so the debate doesn't continue to go round in circles, can I offer a point of clarification? I think it was a little bit.
I'm still talking, but I'll sit down. Sorry.
Yeah. Look, there's you know, I was a little bit confused at the beginning when this started going back and forward, but I don't see, and I would prefer this to be a point 4, because I don't see how we can't approve the questions, but then delegate the authority
okay, so you'd
to
like
the
to
general
be
manager.
an extra point 4?
Yes, correct.
Yes, all right, thank you. Alderman Briscoe, please.
So point 4 will be that general manager has delegated authority to modify question 9.
Apparently,
No, I just want to get clarification. So what we are, I do, perhaps could Alderman Barakis explain it again?
Johns to read out the amendment, please.
Sorry, I don't have one.
Okay, the amendment has to be provided in writing, I'm afraid, or we just...
No, it does not have to be provided.
In fairness, I think I might have it. So let me just...
Could we put it on the screen?
That's asking too much.
Can I try and assist, Lord Mayor?
Yeah, go.
As I understand the amendment to be, and Alderman Barakis has just emailed it to me, so the General Manager will be delegated to revise the proposed questions and or develop new questions in regard to the future of Condell Place Car Park, taking account of the feedback provided by the North Hobart Traders Association in their submission dated Monday the 30th of November 2020. So that's the motion, that's the amendment before the floor.
Okay, look, I'll have to take it on faith a bit because I can understand where the amendment's coming from. So I'll take it on faith that the General Manager, if it passes tonight, will be just modifying one or two questions, one question or adding another question. Because I'd like to think we give more guidance to the General Manager. Yeah.
And we don't get to see them.
We don't get to see them before it gets sent out. Now, I decide when I sit down. I haven't run out of time, Lord Mayor. Is it possible, through you, Lord Mayor, to ask Alderman Barakis to be more specific in what he's asking the General Manager to do?
Withdraw.
Thanks for the question, Alderman Briscoe. Look, it's specifically in regards to the questions relating to Condell Place. So obviously, question 9 is a big part of that. But also, if there was questions that needed to be adjusted or added in the tick box sections. But obviously, the main part is question 9.
Can you refer to question 9?
Look, I'm happy to refer to question 9 if it prevents some of the confusion. It wasn't a issue in committee, but. So the General Manager be delegated to revise proposed question 9 and or develop new questions in regards to et cetera, et cetera,
Is the seconder happy with that change? Who's the seconder?
Was the seconder?
Who's
Thomas is the seconder.
Didn't have one.
Thomas seconded, yeah.
He is now.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. Is there any further comment on the amendment, please?
As the official seconder, I would just
Could we check the video?
Forget the tape. You've got so much to look at tonight. The reality is, we do need to make sure that 4, 9, and there was another one, 8, that have reference to this car park. They've all got to be consistent, Nick. So get it right. Otherwise, and on that basis, I will agree.
Okay,
Lord Mayor, this firstly a question through you to the director. Director, have we already in these changed questions have things that are reflected from the Traders Association as well as the Residents Association in these amendments? From the committee, I mean?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor, in part, not necessarily in relation to, I think the traders in their response do talk about future development options of Condell Place, and within the body of the report that matter is highlighted, and the officer's response is, well, that's really a policy position on the part of council, and it's over to council to make that determination as to whether they want to add questions around
Thank you. Just in relation to this amendment, I'm finding it very confusing, a very strange way of putting it in part 1 or adding it to part 4. You know, like I'm not sure if this is making it up on the run, as is the saying. It's an incredible thing to be trying to weave into something, giving delegation to the general manager. I mean, we spent 2 weeks. We deferred this. I think it was a unanimous deferral, so that we can consider the questions, and they have been rewritten. So I think that's the main thing. This amendment is a very strange amendment to be adding, and it's a very unclear process as to how this has been undertaken.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to this, I am quite convinced within myself that when the 2 representatives this afternoon we spoke to, my question to both of them was, are you satisfied with the questions? And both of them said yes in the affirmative. Point number 2, 1.2 says the current operation of Condell Place as a car park be maintained and include long-term car parking options and or multi-story purpose uses. We have already adopted that. And it is quite wide in its scope to take that on board and gives them that concern that they had. So I think we have already adopted that in there. To bring out the other, it's going to simply complicate it. And that's what appears to be happening. So for me, we have taken the concerns of both those representatives. They were quite happy with the questions. We had deferred it specifically for that. It's not been done. We're delaying it, and it's not the way to go. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Coates, Alderman Barakis, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe.
Against?
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
That's a 6-6 vote, so it's lost.
Okay, would anyone like to speak to the substantive motion, unamended? No? All right, I'll put the... Would someone like to sum up? No? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 9. Moving to the closed.
Move that we close this and go into the closed.
Seconded by Alderman Sexton. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously.